Do you struggle with mother-daughter relationships? And how could you make those relationships flourish? That's the question we're asking today on Flourish-Meant. I'm your host, Tina Yeager. Flourish-Meant is part of the Spark Media Network and can be heard on the Edify app. Today, I have with me Blythe Daniel and her mother, Dr. Helen McIntosh. Blythe is a literary agent and author whose works have appeared in multiple magazines. She and her mother, Dr. McIntosh, have written I Love You, Mom, and Mended, Restoring the Hearts of Mothers and Daughters. Dr. Helen McIntosh has doctorates in education, counseling psychology. She's a counselor, speaker, educator, and author of Messages to Myself and Eric, Jose, and the Peace Rug. Her work has also appeared in magazines of many different types. So I'm so thrilled to have you both on the show today. Welcome, Blythe and Dr. McIntosh.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So tell us what really stirred your hearts to write together as mother and daughter. I know that this process can be challenging for any co-authors, and I just wonder if this was something that brought you together as mother and daughter, or if it was something that you saw challenges in your relationship, or both.
Well, I'll start off and just share as the daughter and working in publishing as I have, I had always had this desire to write a book, and I just wasn't sure what. And Mom and I started talking about, well, could we share about the things that we've learned as mother and daughter? And Mom's comment was something like, well, who would want to read something that talks about all the good? So let's make sure that we talk about the hard places that we've been and write. People want to relate to struggles, as you've noted in some of the discussions that we've had, Tina, about your podcast. And so really it came about because we just had this burden to help mothers and daughters draw closer together as we have learned to do. And so we started putting together notes for this book, the first book, Mended, and then that really gave some practical points and opportunities for mothers and daughters to walk closer together and have conversations. And then I Love You, Mom is our new book. That's a gift book to celebrate mom. So I would say that the I Love You, Mom book in our heart now is to give a practical example or a practical way for women to express their hearts to mom. So that's from my viewpoint, how we started into this road of relationships and how to flourish in those relationships.
She's summarized it well. We just both have such a burden for friends and even strangers that tell us their stories of broken relationships with their family members, especially their moms. And while Blythe and I have a really ridiculously wonderful relationship, I did have a very difficult relationship with my mother, Tina. She was just angry so much of the time. And I would say as a clinician that it was a great deal of verbal abuse on her part to my heart. So I spent years and years studying scriptures and psychology and all that I could to try and have some answers for the difficulty that we were in. So our two books really are the products of our putting down some hopeful answers to how to move a relationship forward and how to go from a difficult, broken relationship to starting over. It's been such a sweet time with Blythe. I have told my friends, I said, Blythe and I have not had one moment's trouble writing together. So it has been a great journey. It's just the Lord.
Wow, that's amazing. I don't know that I've heard any other co-authors express their experience as having no trouble with that co-writing authorship. So that in itself, it is a miracle. I'm glad to hear that you guys are doing this so fluidly. And I would love to hear how you would give this advice to new moms who had difficult relationships with their mothers. what is a way that they can try to develop a flourishing relationship with their children after they've really not had a good model for that?
We indicate in our two books, the Mended book and then the I Love You Mom book. We give you the gift of words in both books to start over with. We read in scripture how words they give life, or they give the reverse, they give death. And so our focus, probably we could say, is to give words of strength and power. And we have perhaps maybe 36 conversation starters in the Mended book, and then 25 ways to start over in the I Love You Mom book. But just a simple sentence can completely reverse the relationship. For instance, you could say, as the daughter to the mom, this is one of the examples in Mended. Mom, what I want is for us to be able to start over. That's my desire. What do you think that we need to do to make things better? So it's a question. And we just love the stories that have come back to us, that it's really been successful, and it's been a way for moms and daughters to completely start over. Blythe, what are your thoughts, darling?
Tina, especially when you talk about new moms, and maybe they didn't have a great relationship with their mom, and now they're finding themselves wanting to connect well with their children. And one of the things that I think is so important is to carry forgiveness in our heart, where we haven't had a strong role model or a good relationship, is to be able to verbalize that. And sometimes it's to the mom directly to say, I choose to forgive you for how I have felt distanced from you, or how I have felt hurt. And I know you didn't mean to do that, or I know that wasn't an intentional, or whatever the fill in the blank might be there, but it is to just release that person from holding on, because it creates a bondage between you that we don't want to be in that position. And especially as we're bringing up children in the next generation, we want to release those ties. So I think forgiveness is such a huge part in how we relate to each other, and even being able to write out a message to the other person. Sometimes we use that as an action point too, of writing a letter or sending a text message or a video of yourself. There's just ways to take action to just be able to say, my heart is to have a good relationship with you. And I know we're in a tight spot right now, but this is my heart for you. And sometimes that can really open the door to further conversation. And so we're just wanting to help people take that first step, which can lead to deeper conversation and can lead to a flourishing relationship. But oftentimes we're scared of taking that first step, or we feel like the other person should take that first step. And what we want to suggest or offer is that we can be initiators of restoration. We can be women who are not afraid to mention some of those hard things and start the conversation, so that we can be restored, so that we can be flourishing in our relationships the way that God's designed us.
I love that you've given a framework of words for people who might not be as gifted with words, so that they can really delve into the best parts of moving those relationships forward. And I'm also thinking of adoption, people that have adopted children, and children who may have been in the foster care system before they were adopted, with the attachment issues and all of the things that go with that. And usually there's some form of abuse that has happened in the past of that child. So being able to really connect well with their adoptive parents can be difficult. Would you say that I Love You Mom can help give kids who are adopted a way of really connecting in relationship and knowing what that can look like?
I think it can. I really feel like I Love You Mom is some simple ways to just show how treasured that mom is. And I met two daughters recently who were adopted from different countries. And I was looking at their special needs, and I thought about the mom who chose those children. And as those daughters grow up, they will know how much they are loved. And so for those girls, for any child or any adult to be able to hand this gift book to a mom that celebrates her for who she is, I feel like it does create a closer bond when we can say words like, you are faithful, you are abundant, you are confident, you are courageous. Like, those words really mean a lot to a mom who might be struggling right now to know her place and to know how God sees her, first of all, and then how the person giving her this book, how they see her as someone who has sometimes a thankless job. But I do feel like it can bond mothers and daughters, or mothers and sons who are adopted, because that love, we are adopted as God's sons and daughters. And so it works so well for us to know our place in God's kingdom, as well as in our family, the adoption that comes. So each of us are adopted by God. And then there's those special moms that have adopted children as well. And I do feel like it's important that moms know how valuable they are.
I really do agree. And Blythe and I are calling these materials helps with legacy of love. We want to really encourage the younger and the older women listening to consider leaving a legacy of love, whether you're blessing the ones older than you or younger than you. But what a wonderful thing we could be doing right now in such a dark culture that's around us. And I have been thinking so hard about Psalm 90, 91, 92, 90 talks about teach us to number our days, and 91 talks about learning to abide in the shelter and the shadow of the Lord. And I love 92, which follows it and says, we can flourish just like a palm tree. It says, even bear fruit in our old age. And, I was at a conference recently, standing in a very large parking lot, and a stranger, a young woman, came up to me with a little cup of fruit in her hand. And she said, I just want to bless you with this. And she said, I know that the desire of your heart is to bear fruit in an old age. And I said, oh, honey, you're right. That is the desire of my heart. And I think Blythe and I both feel that this is something that tangible that women of all ages can begin to do, if they haven't already started, to pass down blessing and begin very practical ways to set up a legacy of love.
We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to get back with Dr. McIntosh and Blythe Daniel and talk a little bit more about the specific things that we can do to flourish in our mother-daughter relationships. Join Spark Media Network in supporting Samaritan's Purse, which provides international relief services. To learn more or donate, visit SamaritansPurse.org. And we're back with Blythe Daniel and Dr. Helen McIntosh discussing flourishing in mother-daughter relationships. I am excited about this topic because I think it's something that many families struggle with, because we have so much brokenness in our culture and so many broken families and people that have endured dysfunction and loss and things that can be really harmful in those mother-daughter relationships. What are some specific ingredients to really intentionally seek out in order to have a flourishing mother-daughter relationship?
I think some of the real practical ways in flourishing with mothers and daughters is to always be ready to ask your mother or your daughter, how do you feel like I'm doing right now? How do you feel like you're seeing me as your mother, as your daughter? Because when we can ask the other person and do a check-in, it's so helpful for us to see those places that we might need to ask forgiveness for, or or just know that this is an area that I need to work on. It's a vulnerable question, Tina, but I feel like that is the heart of all relationships, is vulnerability. And so, I have asked that question hoping that my daughters or son would say, "Oh, you're doing great, Mom. There's nothing." But they've always been able to come back with something that's been helpful. And so I value that. And that's what my mom has done with me over the years too, that has really strengthened our relationship, is these check-ins where we can just say, how am I doing? How do you see me helping you? Or how am I hurting you at this point? So that's one idea for you.
Oh, she's got it right. And one of the other things we feel strongly about, Tina, is when you're wanting to give feedback or even make a correction, we suggest to women of all ages that they invite themselves in. They would preface the conversation with something like, may I share a concern I have about this, or may I give you some feedback, and get permission. It sure does save a lot of heartache. And we've had many stories returned to us that have said that made a huge impact in the relationship. Those are just some quick ideas.
I want to ask about how to navigate boundaries. Now, you have a very healthy, flourishing relationship, mother and daughter. Some people do not have that framework to go from. So, not knowing how much is to impose and how much is to be too withdrawn, how do you navigate that process in a healthy way?
I'll share, as the daughter, and then also raising daughters currently, and a son. But I feel like, I never want my kids to feel stifled, or that I'm trying to speak for them, or that I'm overstepping. And Mom can share a little bit about a term that she has for this, but we're just careful to, again, ask questions that would allow us to see, how are we overstepping in a certain area, or we want our kids to make their own choices and guide them as they get older. If we make all the choices for them and set up too strict of a boundary, it really can lead to rebellion. And I appreciated how my parents, when I was growing up, really allowed me to make some mistakes. They didn't try to, squash me or like hem me in too closely where I wasn't going to be able to make those mistakes even within their home before I set out. So I feel like it's almost like a testing area of like, what we're comfortable with as parents, and allowing our kids to make mistakes, allowing our kids to, in some ways have some boundaries of their own with us and with their friends. They can start developing good boundaries inside the home. And we need to, kind of rein them in at times, or say that's enough time on your phone or whatever it might be. But I feel like when there's trust, kids do better when they can see that the parents trust them to a degree that's appropriate for their age level. When there's too much control, it makes the kids feel like they're not able to make their own decisions, and it can have an opposite effect of what we would want. So that's my perspective, what I've learned from Mom and what I've seen with my kids.
Well, boundaries is sure one of my favorite subjects. I flunked on boundaries when Blythe was in high school. And the term I made up recently is overlove. I did just love her so much that we were probably a little more enmeshed than we should have been. But I learned letting go when she went off to college, and we've had honest conversations about that. I asked her when she left for college, I said, Blythe, I pray that you'll let me know if I am asking inappropriate information or am enmeshed again. Please, if you sense control on my part, would you please tell me that that's what I'm doing? And I never had that conversation with her. So I guess I was desperate and learned quickly. But it's really important for parents to share with children how to say no and how to say yes appropriately. Those are great conversations for families. And one of the best visual reminders that I've had, the Lord gave me a word picture decades ago for boundaries, and it was two cups bumping. And what comes out of each cup are the issues of one's life, like is in Proverbs 4, where it says, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flows the issues of life. And with proper boundaries, we don't blame one another for things that are in our own cup. For example, when my mother would always say, you make me so mad. Well, I perhaps bumped her cup, but what was coming out of her was really from her own heart. She was blaming it on me, or that's what it sounded like. So those are just a few of the flavor of what we teach about boundaries. Thank you for asking, Tina.
Love that you have really addressed that so well here, and everything that you've said has been amazing. I'm hearing so much about the importance of clear communication. Is that why you think your relationship works so well? And is that something that you're offering to help those who need to know how to do that better in your books and in your articles that you write?
Absolutely. We didn't just get to this place of having a great relationship. I mean, we worked to get to this point. And I think a lot of times people hope for a great relationship and they think, well, we're just too far from that. We just that could never happen for us. And we really do believe that starting some words with your mother or your daughter can lead to a good relationship, and fruitfulness and watering that relationship with word gifts and ways to just really express your heart. Sometimes, again, we feel like, well, the other person has said this to me, and I don't know that I could ever trust them again. And look how God continues to love us and continues to pour into us even when we've hurt him. And so he really is the reason that we can have good relationships, and that as God has forgiven us, we can forgive others. And every day we can start over new. So the clear communications is just staying kind of on, as I said earlier, but just checking in with each other, just keeping your accounts short between each other. And scripture talks about don't let the sun go down on your anger. And so if there's any anger in us, if there's hurt that we need to be able to express, we want to first go to God before we go to the other person. But it's clear that we are to keep good relationships, and families are so important in that dynamic.
We speak a lot about forgiveness, Tina, in our Mended book. That is so huge. That's one of the ways we can honor our mothers and fathers, is to forgive the trauma or forgive the difficulty. Recently, God gave me another word picture, and that is a tennis court. And the Lord said, we're to take care of what's on our side of the net and not always be focused on the other person on the other side of the net. It led me to the Matthew 7 verses on the log in your own eye. And we're called to, even if we're 5% wrong, 2% wrong in a relationship issue, if we will be faithful and take care of that, it just gives us so much power to love the other person and to bless them. And in our new book, I Love You, Mom, out of the 25 devotions, this is my favorite. And it is a blessing and how we can bless either the mother or the daughter. It is so powerful. It gets us out of the enemy camp into a place of blessing. Really, it's supernatural. I was counseling with someone yesterday, and there's someone that has been an enemy. The Lord instructed us for her to start praying a blessing for this person that is in their life daily. And I can't wait to hear how it's going to transform her heart as well as the relationship.
So unconditionally praying blessings over one another is another powerful way to flourish in your mother-daughter relationship, in as much as it has to do with you. You just are responsible for being the best daughter or for being the best mother that you can be, regardless of what's going on the other side of the net. So I love that. That's really great advice and great wisdom and insight. I also want to talk a little bit about one key element that's really important in all relationships. And I'm seeing that you do this in your relationship, and some people may need to add this, and that is play. Having time to just enjoy things together, whether it's serious some of the time and you're doing those check-ins and you're making sure you're maintaining the relationship. I think you also need to put some playtime into your mother-daughter relationship. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Walls can come down when we don't realize that we have some things that we might need to say, but we put some playtime or just some time together connecting into the picture. And it really does bring out the best in us because, we're having fun, we're enjoying something together. And, for those moments, there's not tension. There's not, a great divide between you. You're coming together for something that's really good for both of you. And out of that, conversations can come that might not have come otherwise, because again, your guards are down a bit. You're able to engage in something instead of just constantly talking about the differences that you're having. And so play is great for kids, play is great for adults, and being able to find an activity, maybe that's something that you'll decide to do with your mother or daughter, is to contact them and set up something special, whether it's going to get your nails done or going to paint together, or something that allows you to have some activity and fun and make memories. I think that's something else that Mom and I are so focused on, is just helping families make memories to look back on, because we know that, time goes by so quickly and our children are only young for a short time. And we're just so aware of making the most of every opportunity that we have with each other. And so we never want to live in any kind of regret. Oh, I wish I would have played more. I wish I would have said this. And so we just want women to know that they have the opportunity to be instigators of fun and relationships, and that, while we have the opportunity, let's take that time to do it. It just means a lot for all the parties that are involved.
You mentioned fun, Tina. Do you know that Blythe's son, my grandson, has a joke book coming out this fall? So we do love to laugh.
That is adorable. I did not know that. That's wonderful. How can people stay connected with you and get copies of I Love You, Mom, and your other amazing books, Blythe?
So the best way they can see what we're doing, we have a website set up, and it's ourmendedhearts.com. So OUR mendedhearts.com. We'd love to connect with you there. We also are on Facebook. Mine is just under Blythe Daniel, and Mom's is Helen B, the letter B, McIntosh. And then we're also on Instagram. Mine is just Blythe.Daniel, and Mom's is Nanny 7777. So her favorite number. So we would love to interact with you if you're online at all. And the book, I Love You, Mom, can be found on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's also on Target's website and christianbook.com, just to name a few. But and the same for Mended. Thank you so much, Tina, for the opportunity to share these resources with your audience.
Absolutely. And I hope that all of you listening have enjoyed this conversation about flourishing in your mother-daughter relationships. And of course, I also hope that you come back for the next episode of Flourish-Meant. Flourish-Meant is part of the Spark Media Network and can be found on the Edify app.